Welcome to Faith, Family, Fitness, Freedom on 100.7 The Word. I'm Jason Lupo here with my co-host Aaron Lujan.
Yo.
Yo. What comes to mind just like right now? Like, what are you thinking? Because you've just rattled off like 5,000 things before we started this show. Like, what is in your head right now?
I'm hungry, politics sucks, and Jason Lupo should have won. That's what's going through my head right now.
Wow. What are you hungry for?
I don't know. That's actually the bigger debate right now.
Hungry hippos?
I'm pretty hungry. I think, hippo's on the menu for sure.
Well, I think we're going to enjoy this conversation today, though, because what I want to talk about is the identity crisis in American politics. And whereas we've kind of focused this show on more the conservative Republican side, what's really interesting in what happened on Tuesday, not only in Colorado but across the country, we're actually seeing a identity crisis in the Democrat Party too. And so we're going to talk a little bit about the results, not only here, but across the country, and what that means for party politics in general. Because I think we have a huge identity crisis that is affecting both parties right now. And I don't know, I guess in similar fashion of what most of our shows are, we're going to figure out probably nothing, but we're going to ask lots of questions, and we're going to get people thinking. And who knows, maybe we'll come up with a solution by the end of the show, but probably not. But at least we'll have a intelligent conversation where we can ask the tough questions and just kind of think about what occurred on Tuesday and think about the state of our party politics.
So when you say identity crisis, are you referring to the left self-correcting, kind of walking away from the ledge and the abyss of political suicide, and the right just becoming more milquetoast, more mild?
Well, I think the Republicans for a large time have stayed kind of more moderate. I think we see that moderateness in the Republican Party as a whole, at least from a political standpoint of those that are elected. But yeah, we are seeing that the left is moving closer back to center. Now, what I do think has happened is that the center point has been greatly adjusted to the left. So I think moving moderate right now is truly moving left still. Because if you look at averages and if you look at the mean and the median of where legislation has been, we went from a center line being a center point to where, centrist Republicans and centrist Democrats were kind of truly at a center point. When the progressive left moved so far left, it shifted that needle to the left. And so what we're seeing right now is we are seeing that the Dems are moving back kind of closer to center. But time will tell whether it's moving towards their center or true center. And I think right now it truly is still skewed to the left. I don't think the Republicans have pulled anything back to the center in a realistic fashion. And so I think that we are going back to a center point, but it is not the center point that I think most Americans are hoping for.
I would challenge this entire idea about center or centrism. I don't really know if anybody really knows where we are politically. I feel like we've just been tossed around for the last, call it 8 years, so severely that we're like one of those, protein shakes where, everything has just been completely diluted. I don't really, I think COVID sort of was a nuclear bomb and woke up a lot of people. And I think that we are kind of in the political aftermath of people sort of rethinking what they've been taught their entire lives. And so I would, maybe reframe the context of this conversation and really ask the question, what is the center? I mean, I don't really think that there is a true center point anymore. I think the left has been pushed farther to the left. I think from a public relations standpoint, the Democratic Party has been progressively moving, pun intended, towards the center just for political survival purposes. But I don't really see a center point anymore. I feel like, the right has become the far right, and I believe the left has become the far left. And I don't really think there's, nationally speaking, in general terms, a center point anymore. Would you disagree with that?
So I think it's interesting, right? Because we also have to separate election results from general feeling on the ground, right? The general feeling of the general population. Because what we saw in this particular primary is we saw millions of dollars in Democrat primaries and Republican primaries. And we saw this coming from special interest groups, coming from PACs. They poured money into these races like never seen before, with the sole goal of finding the more center candidates and getting them elected. And what they did was essentially they removed Stephanie Epps and Tim Hernandez from the Colorado House, two individuals that are about as far left as you could possibly imagine, protesting against Israel, all these other things within the House. Just radical ideas, radical bills being passed through, and they removed them. They spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in these races to make sure that they didn't win their reelection and win their seats. And we saw the same thing happen across the country in many of these races. And we actually got rid of one of the squad members on Tuesday from the House, from the Dems, Jamal Bowman out of New York in the 16th district. And so we saw that radical change. Now, in Colorado, what's really interesting is even though you would look at Colorado and go, Colorado's blue, it's blue, it's blue, it's blue, Colorado's congressional seats are probably going to be split in November. There's going to be 4 Dems, 4 Republicans coming out of Colorado serving in Congress. And the Republican side, we had this kind of mixed bag in a lot of sense, right? So Lauren Boebert goes from CD3 to CD4. She narrowly she narrowly won that race in 2022 in CD3. She goes to CD4 in a more safe district. CD3 is a 6-way battle. Might even been more than that, but you have Hurd and you have Hanks that are going at it. Hanks is the more conservative candidate. They go with the more centrist candidate. So we have a Trump-esque like feel in Lauren Boebert, where wherever she goes, she seems to gather the vote. But then at the same time, we're seeing moderates come in these other places. We got Jeff Crank that wins here in CD5, and then we have Gabe Evans, who was supported by Trump, not supported by the Colorado GOP, more of a moderate candidate, probably has the best shot of potentially winning that district. It's more of a swing district than some of these other ones. So we're seeing that for the most part, all of these races are moderate. Now, what I don't believe is that these election results are a direct indication of how the general public feels about these things because of the money that's been poured into these races.
So the money is diluting this perception that it's an organic response, that this is sort of the establishment making a game time decision saying they're not buying this anymore. We're going to go ahead and we're going to adjust our play, so to speak.
Yeah, I think there's that famous, logical fallacy of correlation doesn't imply causation. I think we're seeing that in these elections right here, right? We have the lowest voter turnout in Colorado in the last, I don't even know how long, 10 plus primaries. We're sitting at like 28%, something ridiculous. In some of these districts, we're at 16, 17% that return their ballots. So we see a low voter turnout. We see the most money that's poured into House primaries, things like that in history of Colorado. Money's flocking in, low voter turnout, lots of attacks against, party members. And is the election results really an indication of what the American population wants? I don't know.
Why do you think this is? Because right now we're supposedly in the most important election of our lifetime, right? This is the year, as it always is, and every year we buy it, right? And I buy it again this year. So if we're in the most important election of our lifetimes and all this millions of dollars is getting poured in, and yet I'm looking around to my left and my right and I'm seeing arguably political apathy amongst the people, why is that? Why is there so much on the table as we're being told, at least the political rhetoric, that this is the most important election of our lifetime, yet the people just don't seem engaged? Why is that?
I don't know. I don't know if it's just a burnout, right? I think one of the biggest, and I've never said this in public, and I guess here's the first time, but I think one of the biggest issues that the Republican Party had was when they went after election integrity, it turned off voters. And it didn't turn off voters because it's not like they, thought it was a hoax or whatever. Sure, some of them did. Mm-hmm. But what it did was it created this atmosphere of people go, well, what's the point of voting? They're just going to steal the election. Mm-hmm. And we've got to now combat that feeling as well. And I know that feeling exists on the ground. I know that people feel that way. They go, what's the point of voting? They're going to steal the election anyways. and it's going to hurt the Republican Party big time. I don't think that the whole election integrity thing is hurting the party because of the left or the establishment calling it a hoax. And I know that there's plenty of political people here in Colorado Springs that are going after the party once again. Republicans going after other Republicans about this election integrity thing. But it is truly an issue. I do truly believe it's an issue. I do think that we have election integrity problems. But I think that the bigger impact is the fact that people don't believe that their vote's going to count.
And you mentioned political identity crisis. I want to talk about the Republicans. I feel like there's a lot of people that identify or are registered Republican that don't believe that the party speaks for them. Is this the cause? Are we having an identity crisis, at least from the Republican side of things, because the people just don't have faith in their politicians and their elected officials?
The problem is this, right? There's a lot of talk about unifying the party.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of talk about unity in the party. But the big issue is that what do we unify around?
Mm-hmm.
What is the point that we're unifying around? And that's the hot topic, right? You have one half of the party who believes still that there's this idea of crossing the aisle, negotiating, working with the Democrats, working with other elected officials to get the job done, which I don't believe is the most. I don't believe it's working, especially in a place like Colorado. I don't think that there's any leverage. I don't think that there's any chance that really we're making a difference from a diplomatic negotiation standpoint. And then you have the side of the party, and this is both sides, right? Democrats and Republicans. The what we would consider radicals or progressives, the progressive conservatives, progressive liberals, those more radical outskirts of the party. They want us to unify, and I want this too. I want unification around a central belief, right? The core beliefs of the party. What is this party about? And the public has been led to believe that these two sides of the aisle, that the Republicans and the Democrats, should be working together all the time.
Mm-hmm.
When the nation was founded and we have these two political parties, part of the whole point is to have that divide so that we're not just passing 1,000 bills every year in the state of Colorado. We're not just passing 100,000 pieces of legislation around the country. There's supposed to be a gridlock. There's supposed to be a battle. We're not just supposed to be passing everything that ever comes to play. We have a passage rate of bills and laws and pieces of legislation that are far higher than they ever should be. We should be debating things for centuries before we pass them, because half the stuff we're passing shouldn't be in play to begin with.
I feel like those on the right should go harder right, just to self-correct. I mean, I don't buy this whole let's just continue to elect, Mr. Rogers. I don't think it's helping at all. I think you've already indicated that you would have been a great candidate. I think we need these types of candidates in all those offices that are just going to raise hell, because hell's been raised on the other side. This idea of centrism, I think, is a illusion. I think it's a lie. I think we need to go hard on freedom. We need to go hard on the Constitution, on liberty. That's what we need. And forgive me for being pessimistic. I really think this is going to get to a point where this is going to be very obvious to the general public. This is not going to be solved politically. And unfortunately, that's not going to look good. But I think this is, where we're headed on a lot of these issues, because these issues are dealing with, very important issues to the family, and these are lines that are not going to get crossed. And once those lines get crossed, we're going to be dealing with consequences that politics should have solved, further down the road than the point that we're at today.
Yeah, I think that you are 100% correct. It's what I ran on, right? We need to move the party further right. It's how we move the needle further right. It's how we slow down the process. Right now, the process is not being slowed down in Colorado. It's being sped up. They're passing whatever they want with very little amendments or negotiation with the Republicans. It's a losing system. It's a losing battle. And I wouldn't say that just because the results came in against the more conservative candidates, that the people want less conservative candidates. I don't think that the election results are an indication of how the general population feels. In fact, I feel like many of these Republicans are not showing up to vote. The voter turnout is low because they see the lack of fidelity within the party, the lack of fidelity to a common cause, the lack of fidelity to true conservative principles. And so, what's the point? And then we have candidates that are being outspent 10 to 1, 13 to 1, and they're only losing the race 2 to 1. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
And if you want to talk about unity, which all these people want to talk about unity, let's put it this way. We still have, on average, 33 to 40% of the voting primary population that chose to support Trump-esque, super conservative like individuals. And so the 60% right now is saying, no, you need to come to our side. You need to be a more establishment, centrist, conservative. And these 40% over here are going, there's not a chance. And so we're going to continue to see this divide. If they want unity, they've got to come right. They can't just expect everybody from the right to go all the way back to center. So, sure, you want to find a party, you want to find a center point within the Republican Party. I don't love it, but I'd be down for that as opposed to the far right going all the way back to center. I don't want it. It's not going to happen. I'm not going to do it.
No, we're never going back.
I could tell you that these legislators that we have, right? We have 19 legislators and only 4 finished, above a B in the Liberty scorecard. Why don't we just aim to take all of the Republicans and move them to a C? I'd be thrilled with that if we can get them to a C. Most of them are D's and F's.
Has the MAGA political movement, as we know it, influenced local politics the way it's influenced national politics, nationally speaking?
It depends on the state. 100%.
Here?
No. I don't think. I think to a large extent there is areas of Colorado that have been heavily influenced by this kind of Trump excitement, right? We saw Pueblo flip red.
Right.
100% Trump. 100% Trump. We've seen some movement in some of these districts that are super conservative, like moving towards the more conservative candidates. But across like El Paso County, it is still heavily establishment controlled from a political standpoint. Now, from the people,
the
right,
mind share, if you will.
The people are still utterly upset, utterly pissed off with a lot of things having to do with the pandemic, things like that. The problem is we have to activate them in a way. We have to get them motivated, and then we have to give them something to do, and that's something we failed to do. Is the people that are upset, they get upset about something. Maybe they'll go fight at 2 school board meetings, or maybe they'll show up to the county commissioners meeting one time, and then they think that their job is done and that they don't have to fight in this political realm anymore. And that's great that you've done that, but you got to stay on top of these people.
Yeah.
You literally have to bring hell in order to correct course, because what's happening as our legislators go, well, if I can just slide underneath the radar, nobody will ever know. And, here we have a couple really strong conservatives between Scott Bottoms, Stephanie Luck, Brandy Bradley, Ken DeGraff, and the Republicans love them. Everybody loves them. All the Republicans love them. They weren't primaried. Like, they are loved, adored, cherished. They are put on a pedestal, but then the general population can't realize why they love them so much, which is the fact that they're actually true to their word, that they're true to the Republican cause, that they're true to the Republican platform. And they can't figure this out. And it's mind-boggling that a lot of the public can't figure out why some Republicans are so much better than other Republicans. And they won't take that assumption, that feeling, that thought, that idea, and then move it down the line and go, hey, guess what? Why is my representative, who claims to be a Republican, not as strong as those 4?
Why do you think that is?
I don't know if it's because there's just a complete lack of communication, whether there's a lack of conservative media in Colorado. I think that plays a huge part of it. I could tell you one of the big things is all the conservative candidates were attacked left and right, tooth and nail. I mean, attacked, right? Thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars being sent out in mailers and attack ads and all this other stuff. And the ultra conservatives, they don't attack back. They don't attack back. I mean, when's the last time you saw an ultra conservative really attacking their opponent? other than the Dave Williams, Jeff Crank battle, which there was a huge difference in spend there. But we don't see the far right candidates really attacking the more centrist moderate candidates, which is actually opposite of Trump to a large degree, right? If these are Trump-esque candidates,
Follow the playbook.
yeah, maybe follow the playbook. I don't know. But if you want to have a fair battle, I think the only way we get back to a fair battle in terms of these fights is you gotta hit back.
Yeah, I don't think meekness is a value in politics, especially if you're a far right conservative candidate. You got to get in there. You got to fight. You got to start taking names. Shed some blood, guys. I think that's the future.
We're going to take a brief time out. When we come back, we're going to continue this conversation. Welcome back to Faith, Family, Fitness, Freedom on 100.7 The Word. I'm Jason Lupo, co-host Aaron Lujan.
Hey, everybody.
Still thinking about food. Still hungry.
Still hungry.
Still wants food. But
Still going to get it.
we're going to sit here and we're going to debate this politics stuff because, well, it's intriguing. It's intriguing to come off the race. And I'll tell you what, I am disappointed that I did not win the race. It doesn't break me. It's not going to stop me. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. I'm going to keep charging ahead. And ultimately, God's got a plan for my life. And at this very moment, his plan was not for me to serve up at the Capitol. And I respect that. And I don't think that this campaign went to waste. I think sometimes it's really easy to go, well, I lost why run again? Why does this even matter? Why did you do it? I don't feel that way in any shape or form because I feel like we still did make an impact through this campaign. And at the end of the day, we still impacted 6,000 plus people. And so, all these candidates that are still fighting really hard to move the Republican Party further right, I don't think their efforts have gone to waste. I don't think it's time for them to not run again. I don't think it's time for them to step aside and give way to the more moderate candidates. I still think that everybody should be primaried, and that's what we're seeing on both sides of the party. And the Dems used to never really primary individuals, and they're starting to primary the individuals that are more radical. And so I think, if we want to hold people accountable, one thing is you make them fight for their lives every 2 years.
Yeah. What would you say, Jason, to the people that really are just devastated? These grassroots candidates just never seem to win. What kind of hope would you give people here in Colorado Springs that here we are again, another election where the grassroots candidates got defeated? What words of hope could you give us folks?
2 years starts today. The race starts today. In fact, it started on Tuesday. We cannot just come to the table every three months or every 3 months before the election, every 18 months or 16 months or whatever it is. We have 2 years before the next cycle, like 2 years before the next election. We have to use the entire 2 years to continue this fight. We can't just sit on our hands. And so that's what's happened. Don't be utterly discouraged, right? We're still in this race. We still have to hold accountability. We still have to hold legislators' feet to the fire. But the race starts today. It doesn't start 16 or 18 months from now when we're gearing up for caucus and assembly. It starts today, right? And it's not even centered around a candidate. It's centered around, hey, let's make sure that we return back to biblical truth. And we have to get our churches going.
Yep.
I mean, the evangelical vote didn't show up. It didn't show up. It didn't show up in Colorado. And ultimately, at the end of the day, that's going to depend on what the election results are in November, is whether or not the evangelicals show up. And so I think it's really easy to go, well, we lost, whatever, let's give up. Now's not the time for that. In fact, now is the time to gear up for the next go-around.
Amen. Let's do it.
This has been a great show. Thank you so much for joining us. Faith, Family, Fitness, Freedom on 100.7 The Word. Check this out at faithfamilyfit.org. Join us next Saturday at 9 a.m. and every Saturday at 9 a.m. Thanks for joining us. Have a blessed day.